I'm Aryeh Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. August 31st was a big night in the W, as each game has so much impact in the playoff positioning. I'm here with Adam Miller, Winsidr staff writer who covers the Mercury, and we're about to talk everything about the Chicago Sky Phoenix Mercury game. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content on winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. And remember, downloading the episode makes our stats look better, your listening experience better, and allows us to continue doing this important work. And my final plug, you want to sponsor an episode or sponsor something else on the Winsidr network, just email us, info@winsidr.com. Adam, last night, there was some big important WNBA games. This is part one of a series where I'm bringing on different staffers from the Winsidr staff to just discuss the impact and what happened last night. But just to give people a little bit of background, the Sky and the Mercury, two teams that were red hot, right? The Chicago Sky just came off a couple games where they were winning. They beat what many people believe, and this isn't shade to the Connecticut Sun, but there's still more of a hype cloud around the Seattle Storm, even with their recent blunders. Chicago Sky handed them one of those blunders, and they go into Phoenix to take on the Mercury, who are on an 8-game win streak. And not to bury the lead, well, if you didn't watch the game or if you didn't look at the stats, you might already know. But, I mean, a very impactful game just from a playoff standings position. We're talking about Chicago Sky, who's numbered in the 6th seed, Phoenix Mercury in the 5 seed. Chicago Sky 14-13, Phoenix Mercury 16-10. Obviously, those numbers are post last night's game, but it's a really interesting aspect because the Phoenix Mercury Phoenix Mercury were on a 7-game win streak. I believe now they're on an 8-game win streak. And those records were before the game because the league website does not like to update things after a game, I guess. But Adam, just initial thoughts. What was kind of your perception of this game going into it? What the keys were going to be, and from macro and micro on this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the Sky, they've really been led by Candace Parker in some of their more recent wins, and so stopping her was going to be key to winning. And Phoenix did exactly that. She was held to 2 points on 0 for 2 shooting in 24 minutes, so she didn't have much of an impact. And Skyler, the other aspect of the game is that Skyler Diggins-Smith really did exactly what she's been doing the second half of the season. She's shot 8 for 13. She's been on fire, really. She's been shooting over 60% from both the field and from 3-point range since the end of the Olympic break, and it's really good to see. I think she's been a big spark plug for their success. I mean, obviously, Brittany Griner also dominated this game with 18 points, but when you just look at how much Diggins-Smith has taken over, it's really an impressive feat.
Yeah, and honestly, like, whether or not it's been said enough, she's playing the best. She's the best guard in the league right now, in my opinion. The way she's playing, I mean, she goes up against, right, if we're talking about point guards in this league, if we're talking about, who is the premier, there's always been kind of knocks against her, right? When she was on Dallas, it was, oh, this team's bad and she's not performing, and when it matters most, she doesn't perform at the highest level. Then when they had Liz, they still couldn't get it going, and obviously, their time together was stifled with mystery and stories. But I mean, the way she is playing right now, she's not going to. It's a little bit late to enter into the MVP discussion. Brittany Griner, who definitely also helped this late surge from the Phoenix Mercury to push up to number 5. I mean, I remember just a few weeks ago we were sitting going, hey, one loss and the Mercury might be out of the playoff race at this point. So if you're a Phoenix Mercury fan, you gotta be real hyped. But let's talk about the importance from a larger scale. Getting the win against the team that is right behind you in the standings with, 6 games to go before we hit the playoffs. mentally, if you're in that locker room going into the game, what's your mindset of the importance of that game? Are we like, do you feel that the Phoenix Mercury are already in a playoff mindset? Because if anybody follows Phoenix Mercury, and I always tweet this out, joke about it, talk about it on the pod, I feel like it's every year. Going into the season, they have the talent where they could run the gambit, they could win the championship, they could win the finals. But every year, you almost get midway into the season, a quarter into the season, you go, oh, they got me again. Like, they're underperforming. They're not seeing the flow. They're just not the powerhouse that we all think they could be. But then, second half of the season, bada boom, this team just surges, hits the playoffs running. I don't know if that's a strategy, if it's just of that savviness of them. But yeah, it's a long-winded question. But mindset-wise, is this already playoffs for the Phoenix Mercury?
I think so. I mean, and I think part of it has to do with Taurasi returning. I mean, you can say her shooting has been a little streaky, but regardless of how she does on the floor, she's at worst a decoy for the defense. I mean, I don't think I think there's a strong correlation between Taurasi coming back and Skyler getting open shots. I mean, when earlier in the season, she was having to bring the ball up and then take most of her shots. And then if the ball wasn't forced out of her hand, she was taking these contested shots in double teams. Now she's essentially getting more open shots because Taurasi's getting attention, Greiner's getting attention. In this game, Keanders was able to hit open shots. So that just opens up the floor for Diggins Smith. And even if she's, sometimes, and also she's not responsible for primary ball handling duties. So she can share that with Taurasi, and she's also able to come off the ball a little more. She said in an interview recently that was actually one of the factors as to why she's able to score so much, is because she doesn't have to bring the ball up all the time. Sometimes she can make plays coming off the ball. So I think that's been a big factor to why they're all of a sudden winning.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's an interesting aspect too, because the thing that I don't remember if it was Sandy brought this up or if it was one of our debates in the Winsidr Slack. But we were just talking about, Taurasi's best seasons, and I want to say I'm blanking if it was she was off ball or she was on ball, and we got into this whole debate about it. But yeah, no, you're completely right. Having that ability to kind of pick your poison and play to whatever's working that game, right? It's just been such an element to this team. But the biggest thing, honestly, has been, in my opinion, this team is no longer looking for Taurasi to be their hero. They're no longer, if you ever watched, what was it, Achilles, the movie with Brad Pitt, when like the giant like armies get together and they're like, wait, let's not kill a bunch of people. Let's just have these two people duke it out. For a very long time, I feel like the Phoenix Mercury's mindset, and this is a ridiculous comparison, was to just call up Achilles and call up Diana Taurasi and say, hey, do this for us, as opposed to understanding or really utilizing the skill set that this whole team had. Like, everybody else was the backup singer to Taurasi. And now I almost feel like there's been a shift this season at some point. I don't know when it happened. Maybe you have your ear to the ground and you understand that better than me. Maybe you think I'm crazy for saying this, but I feel like there's been a shift where it's no longer, obviously it's Diana Taurasi's team. She's the leader, but there's almost like a passing of the baton going on. And I don't know if that baton's going to Skyler or to BG or what, but it just seems like less of a burden of reliance is on Diana. Am I crazy?
No, I think Taurasi's injury is kind of a blessing in disguise for Skyler. I think she's taking charge a lot. Like if you watch some of the games when they were losing, Skyler would get exasperated with her teammates for missing open shots or not making the right play. And she definitely communicated that in interviews. Maybe not as exasperated as she was on the bench, but either way, I think that injury allowed her to really take control of the team, and eventually the locker room got used to hearing her voice. And now I think that Taurasi's back. I think she understands that this isn't going to be her team for much longer, and that it may be best to give other people kind of the spotlight. And so between those two factors, I think Diggins Smith has really taken on a nice leadership role that will serve the Mercury well in the future.
So let's do a little breakdown of this game. Feel free to chime in at any point if you feel like I missed anything. I mean, the Mercury take an early 10-point lead, and essentially for the most part of this game, it was right around give or take a few points. So anywhere from like 8 points to 13-point lead, going back and forth, and not by back and forth, I mean between that range. Very much so. I mean the and I'm curious for you about this because I was watching the game and I don't know if it was my TV was messed up or what, but for a long period of time I couldn't see the score, and or maybe it was just like a classic WNBA blunder on
Yep, I would say
the presentation. Yeah, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching the game, and this rarely happens when you watch a game and you're like, wow, this one team is playing so smooth, and then the score comes up and you're like, ooh, but they're losing by 10 points. Or I think at that time they were losing by 8 points, 9 points. I like, honestly, I was impressed by how the Sky were playing. The shots just weren't dropping, and that was very early on. And it was the exact opposite story for the Mercury, where I wasn't necessarily watching the Mercury and thinking, oh my God, this is beautiful basketball, but the shots were dropping and they were taking advantage of their opportunities. And then it just, at a certain point, when you continue that as a storyline, it gets harder and harder for the team, right? If you're doing good sets, it starts to eat away at you, and you start to doubt and guess and make over corrections, under corrections, whatever it is. And we get into the third, and the Sky make a comeback and bring it to a 1 point lead. And at that point, I'm sitting there going, okay, is this a team that has started to figure it out and can make a push? Obviously, look, Brittany Griner coming back from that injury is still not 100%. I think that was clear. She looked off she was not playing the MVP caliber level Brittany Griner that we've seen of recent. And normally I would chalk that up to effort, but it didn't seem like it was an effort question. But after that game got, to that 1 point closeness, after that, the game just ballooned out of hand. And it was really done for the Chicago Sky, and the Phoenix Mercury ran away with it. Kind of talk to me about your analysis of what went on there, and what you saw, why you feel like the Mercury were able to pull away and really extend that lead when the game, started to look like we might have a ball game. I mean, I'm on East Coast time, so I was sitting there like, I really want this to be a good game, but also like, if we can call this early, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came down to defense and rebounding. I mean, if you look at one of the players we haven't talked about is Brianna Turner.
Huge.
She hasn't had a huge role in the team, but if you look at her stat line over the last few games, she's consistently up there in rebounds for the Mercury. And part of that is just that obviously she's able to get on the glass and she has the size to be able to get rebounds. And part of that is that she's also playing good defense. I mean, she's contesting shots. She's getting in players' faces. She's boxing out. So she does a lot of the little things that I think help. And I think having somebody like Turner who's kind of willing to do the dirty work kind of helps shift the game when things aren't necessarily going your way. And so I think eventually I think defense and rebounding really kind of helps set the tone for better offense.
Something I want to say about Brianna Turner is she is a championship caliber player. And when I say that, I don't mean it in the sense of like looking at Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner, like Maya Moore, like players who, are known for winning championships. When I talk about her, I'm talking about like Rebecca Brunson style player, a player who, Rebecca Brunson, as we all know, has 5 championship rings, more than any other player in the history of the league. But the way she plays, the things she does, she's not going to win Finals MVP. She might not even ever win a yearly individual award. Maybe she'll make an all-team. I mean, I think she's already made an all-defensive first or second team last year, but her defense is that good. What she provides to this team is everything they need, right? Like, they don't need high scoring from her position. They need somebody who can help even out the rebound issues, someone who can play tough defense, and somebody who is going to put in the effort and understands that she's not the superstar on the team, especially considering you have 3, maybe even, 3 other superstars and another Canadian star in Kia Nurse. Like, she is just the perfect fit for not only this team, but there are so many teams that would give an arm and a leg to get her. And what she does for this team is like literally like all the things that for years I've been complaining that Brittany Griner isn't doing. Turner fills those voids in a way that it's not just, hey, we're giving another one of our five players out there, giving another one of our five up to like cover this aspect that BG should be covering. Like she gives it all over. Do you think she gets enough attention? I mean, I know we haven't talked about her enough, but do you think she's getting enough attention for the importance that she's playing in this stretch for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's definitely been underrated. I mean, part of that has to do with obviously she's overshadowed by the other three stars, but I mean, just looking at these last few wins, I mean, Turner just has Turner had just played great defense, and her rebounding's really stepped up. I think part of it is that she's understanding her role. I know that in the first half of the season, Brundello was kind of harping over the fact that Mercury weren't rebounding. Well, look who had to step up in order for that to change. So now that we're seeing Turner get involved with more of the rebounding, I think she's played a major role in Phoenix turning their season around.
Like just flat out, I completely agree. And she was a player who, last season when they made a really incredible playoff run, especially considering the fact that we saw Brittany Griner leave the bubble, to see Turner grow in Phoenix in that expanded role last year. Like obviously Kevon was there too. I'm not trying to lesser that, but just what we've seen in the short growth from Turner has been pretty impressive. The other thing that you touched on earlier, if we are going to talk about the Chicago Sky and the Phoenix Mercury playing a game, and I'm going to name two players. One player ends the game with 8 points, 0 for 4 from 3, and the other player ends with 21 points and shoots 4 from 6 from 3. I feel like you know who we're talking about. Kia Nurse, Aryeh Quigley, just a tale of two difference, right? Like if you're the Phoenix Mercury, obviously you need to slow down Candace Parker. Obviously you need to keep your eye on Courtney Vandersloot, one of the best guards in the game. But Aryeh Quigley, one of the best shooters in the game, who has been starting, coming off the bench, leading the second unit, starting again, goes 0 for 4 from 3. And honestly, like, 103-83, fine, whatever. But, like, the defensive effort on the guard play, we talked about what they did against Candace Parker. I mean, talk to me about why you feel Sloot and Quigley, granted, the two players who scored all the points in the first quarter for Chicago, but Nurse versus the two of them. Talk to me kind of about that matchup. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, Quigley. Obviously, Quigley's gonna make 3-point shots, but I think part of what happened was that when I think Nurse applied more pressure, and she was also able to get more help from her teammates. But I mean, the thing is that we don't give a lot of credit to Nurse, but Nurse is a very smart player. I mean, she knows that if she's not shooting well, she can contribute in other ways. She can pass, she can defend. That's one of the reasons why the Mercury went out to go get her, was because they wanted another reliable guard / forward to help out in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, she gave Quigley an awfully hard time. I was surprised to see that myself, that she went out before, because we all know that if there's anyone who you can rely on to have a good night, it's Aryeh Quigley.
Well, yeah, not just 0 for 4 from 3, 4 for 13 overall. I mean, that was just shocking to see, honestly. I mean, yeah, obviously Candace Parker not hitting a field goal for, I think I saw, shout out to Across the Timeline, I believe I saw that was her first game ever in her career without a field goal, which is just mind-blowing. Diamond Shields, up and down game. At times she goes 4 for 10. Kalia Copper goes 8 for 14. Excuse me, I got a little case of the hiccups right there. But with 18 points to lead all scorers for the Chicago Sky. But when you're facing off against a starting five that has Brittany Griner not 100%, dropping 18 and 28, Diana Taurasi dropping 17 and 25, Skyler 20, and 31, and Kia Nurse 21 in 28 minutes. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster for any team they're playing. You gotta like. Here's my thing: when you're playing the Mercury, I'm fine letting Kia Nurse beat you, right? Like that's something that you almost need to say, okay, if we're gonna lose, it's gonna be because Kia Nurse goes off, and that's totally fine, right? You're gonna limit, but if you're gonna do that, you can't let Skyler, Taurasi, and Griner all like have good nights also in that sense. So real quickly, this team, I know we've talked about it in the Slack, but this Phoenix Mercury team, before I flip it to that, like looking forward to the rest of the schedule for the Chicago Sky, the reason that I'm concerned is because when you look at the Chicago Sky's schedule, and I know there's been a lot of talk about this in social media and all the talking heads, you look at the rest of their schedule, they have just a few games left, right? They're playing the Aces, the Mystics, the Aces, and the Fever. That is just a tough schedule, right? So they're going to have to play the Aces three more times. They still play the Aces 3 times. And so for me, looking at these final games, I go, okay, they should have tried to get that. I mean, obviously they tried, but they wanted that victory against the Mercury, right? You can't expect to win all 3 against the Aces, right? Yeah, okay, we'll give them the Fever. The Mystics, who knows what we're going to see there? Is Deladon going to be back? Is Tina going to be back? Are they going to be still fighting for a playoff spot? Are they going to need this one? Like, for me, it was just, this is one of those games that, like, if you're going to make a run to the finals, like we were expecting over the past 2 games, where they were able to beat the Storm 2 games in a row, they were on a little 3-game win streak of their own. But if you're going to do that, you kind of expect that was one of the games they were going to win. Looking at the Mercury's remaining schedule, what concerns you? What excites you? Where's your mind at? Because I know you spoke to their last 3 games are pretty tough, but their next 3 aren't that tough.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing the Fever. They have the Fever twice, and then they have the Dream. So, to me, they have the perfect opportunity to move up. I mean, obviously they're going to have a tough schedule at the end of the season, but it's not completely inconceivable that we get the 3rd seed. Certainly not the 4th seed. And to me, I think a veteran team like this definitely wants to try to get that bye if at all possible, and it would give them a huge advantage. And of the teams that are in the 3, 4, 5 spot, the Storm, the Lynx, and the Mercury, I think the Mercury and the Lynx have the best chance of locking up that bye. So, if you were asking me earlier in the season or even before the season how I thought the Mercury would do, I didn't think they were going to do this well, but certainly they've surpassed my expectations in the second half of the season, and there's no reason to believe why they can't finish the rest of the season strong.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I mean, the really the one team that we're looking at, right? Because in the WNBA standings right now, it's Connecticut Sun, Las Vegas Aces, Seattle Storm, Lynx, and then Mercury. Looking at that, obviously, I think it's 3 through 5 that have the most availability to kind of wiggle around. But knowing that there is an impact, right? If the Phoenix Mercury's final games, they have to play the Aces and the Sun, right? And the Storm. So let's say they win a couple of those, that's going to affect the people above them. And it's a whole, weird Jenga game. But the interesting aspect, kind of looking at the Storm, because they're that bottom 3 of the top 5, right? With the Mercury and with the Lynx. The Storm play the Liberty, the Mystics, then they play the Sparks and the Mercury. So not a very rough ending to the season for the Seattle Storm. I think you can expect them to go 3-1, or at worst 2-2. I'd be shocked to see anything worse than 2-2 from this team going into that. But that said, Phoenix Mercury might be looking at a last game of the season on September 17th, and making a push against the Storm. That last game might have a lot of impact on the seeding of this playoffs. Right now, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. I want you today, September 1st. Give me a prediction. What seed are we going to see the Phoenix Mercury when playoffs come?
I'm going to put the Mercury in the 4th seed. I think 3rd seed would be the best case scenario, but I don't think it's realistic. And I don't, I've shared my feelings about the Storm in our Slack channel, obviously, but I just don't see the Storm living up to their championship pedigree the rest of the season, even with an easier schedule. I think the Lynx and the Lynx and the Mercury finish out the top four, and the Mercury end up in the fourth seed.
Ooh, that's good. That is an interesting hot take. I like it. While we got you, give me a prediction. Will the Mercury sweep the Fever in the next 2 games? Yes or no?
Yes.
Hey, sometimes it's a trap game. All right, sometimes it's a trap game. Well, you heard it here first. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. And let me remind all of our listeners, Winsidr is your one-stop shop for all your WNBA news and conversation. We can't do it without your help. Become a subscriber at patreon.com/Winsidr. For just a few dollars a month, you can help grow the game.